Now, far-reaching changes proposed for the laws governing New Zealand's high country put at risk the landscapes that the promoters of this change want to preserve. South Island farmers are genuinely concerned about the Crown Pastoral Land Reform Bill that's currently being rushed through Parliament. High Country Accord Trust Chair Philip Todhunter joins us now. Good evening, Philip.
Good evening, Sarah.
Now, this has been a very busy time for you. Can you give a bit of context to our audience around this particular reform bill and the urgency that Minister Eugenie Sage is putting around it?
So early last year, the Minister asked for submissions about changing the Crown Pastoral Land Act and introducing a regulatory framework around the discretionary actions of the bill. Over 3,000 submissions were received, and the Accord very quickly put a robust submission in outlining our concerns for what was proposed.
As owners with your wife and family at Lake Heron Station, can you also give us some context of your family's intergenerational custodianship of the high country and why this government in New Zealand shouldn't be concerned around your farming practices?
So my great-grandfather purchased this property in 1917. So I'm the fourth generation farmer or family member to farm this property. And our children growing up all share a deep passion for it as well. We live in an area with high natural beauty, and while we're not a national park, we do have lots of conservation values which we're incredibly proud of.
So let's talk about the high level of consents and what would be required under this reform bill going forward and how that would change your day-to-day farming activities.
So what's proposed is changing from, we currently have a contractual relationship with the Crown. So moving back to 1948, the Crown recognised that the land was being degraded because there were no incentives for the farmers to look after the land, and it was all very short term. So by providing absolute security, they alienated, as what was said in Parliament, the last great alienation, the high country pastoral lease estate, providing perpetually renewable leases with, which provided a great incentive for the stewards then, the farmers, to look after the land. And they put some limitations on that land. One of those was it was to be farmed. The whole property was to be farmed, and that was the way of maintaining, controlling weeds and pests, maintaining soil, and looking after the cover. Because at the time, rabbits were a particular concern, and a considerable amount of bare ground. Currently, if we want to oversown top dress or cultivate a paddock, we need a consent. And what the current reform bill does is it adds an additional layer onto that. So anything outside the existing cultivated paddocks will need to fence. Not need to fence, will need a consent to fence, which seems rather absurd to us. In our press release, we highlighted, wetlands or waterways. Should we wish to fence those off and keep stock away from them, then we will need a consent.
So over the time of the period from that 1948 to today, when it was stated that there was concerns around pastoral leaseholders looking after environmental sort of management of the land, What are some of those ways and examples that you can share with us that high country stations have been able to be good custodians of the land, and in particular, as you said, pest management? I know from my conversations with Ross Ivey at Glentana, his management of wilding pines with grazing rotations has been pretty successful. So there's a few out there and genuinely, deeply passionate about the environment.
Very, very much so, Sarah. And wilding trees or pines, conifers, is a great example. There's many areas in the Mackenzie Basin, certainly the lower Benau House, where grazing has been removed, and that's very light grazing, and the wilding conifer spread has got out of control. And that's become a cost to the taxpayer. And fortunately, there's a lot of money going towards that now to control it. But if the sheep grazing had been maintained, then that problem would not be the same. Other areas, gorse, broom, wilding, wild deer control, goats and pigs and so forth, as well as rabbits.
Yeah, absolutely. With this tākau, I'd like to see you, Jenny, focus on exterminating rabbits as a pest. Now, in regards to tenure review and completely pulling that, what's the High Country Accord Trust's position on what should be done moving forward with tenure review, and how long does it have?
This bill proposes to remove tenure review as an opportunity, and it's not just an opportunity for the lessee, it's also an opportunity for the public. There's vast areas of land which have gone back to the conservation estate and provided recreation and conservation outcomes for that land, which will no longer be an opportunity for the New Zealand public.
Talking about the economic returns of farming in the high country, when I was doing some research, David Parker was quoting around this particular time of the Helen Clark government of his proposed wishes for the environment. And Keith Woodford here from Lincoln University was saying that the merino clip could drop by at least 30% in supply from the changes at the time. How significant would what Minister Eugenie Sage is proposing have on our food and fibre sector economically?
It's disappointing that in time we would anticipate that the merino flock would dwindle even more. There would be less meat and products to sell overseas to earn currency. And not only that, there'll be less money coming back into the properties to put into weed and pest control.
And we're sharing tonight special moments about the high country and people's absolute love and affinity of it. Can you just share with us what makes living where you do so uniquely special to you and your family, Philip?
It's the scenery, the landscapes, the people that we interact with. Landscapes aren't just mountains and the sky, they're also very much the stories and the human interaction and the history, the long family connection with the property, being out with the children, mustering and gathering up the weathers, and the annual routines and the ebbs and flows that come and go.
Thank you so much, Philip Todhunter there from Lake Huron Station, who's chairing currently the High Country Accord. And of course, as we we're just saying, the Minister Eugenie Sage is rushing through Parliament changes to the Crown Pastoral Lease Land Act.
This is Sarah's Country.